Good morning, everyone. We've made it to the final week. It's always a good feeling. Just want to provide space if anyone has anything they want to share or check in about or how everyone's doing today. Okay. Are we all excited that we're approaching the finish line for this semester anyway? I know for me it's kind of been a rough semester. Like it's been long and hard, but yet went really fast. Kind of weird. So one of the first things I do want to do this morning before we really get started into discussion is I want to give everybody just a few minutes to go in and do their course evaluation for this class. So if you've already done it, great. I know that some of you have. Um, I don't know who has done it, but I know some have done it. So if you've not done that, please just take the next, maybe 8 minutes or so to go ahead and get on and get those taken care of while we're right here. That way you don't have to worry about it at any other point in time. So if you're able to get on there and do that now, go ahead and get on. Take, like I said, about 8 minutes until 8:10 to get those course evaluations done. Like I was mentioning before, they are really important. The university really does use them. So not even just for this class, but make sure that you do the course evaluations for all of your classes. As the instructors, we really do appreciate that feedback. I know I've tried to use that as much as I can and trying to implement any suggestions that are given, just to do a better job for the next semester. So just take those few minutes, go in there, get those taken care of and get it knocked out, and then you don't have to worry about it. And we will come back together and start our discussion at 8:10. Does anyone need any additional time before we move on? Or are we good to start going? All right, if you're not able to do it while we're in class, please make sure once we get done with class today that you're able to go in there and knock that out of there. So I had asked for everyone to choose one of the movies or the TV series from the list I provided to watch for class today. I'm just wondering if we start with Little Rock Central, was anybody able to watch that one? Or did anybody choose to watch Little Rock Central? All right, so I will kind of just give you kind of the synopsis of some of what I had noticed in there. There's definitely, if you do ever watch this, you'll notice at the very beginning, it starts out pretty emotional. I gotta think of what her name, I think it's like Mary Jean, the daughter of Brown, who initiated the Brown versus Board of Education. His daughter is the one who speaks at the very beginning of this documentary and makes comment about how she was surprised how emotional she felt because she felt like all of that should be gone by now because it's been over 50 years. But the emotion was all still there. So it's definitely something to kind of keep in mind when working with, especially working with students where there's been any type of trauma within that family. In this particular documentary, it shows the principal sending a challenge to all of the students and the faculty to spend the day with somebody that you don't typically spend it with. You notice a lot in some of these documentaries that even though the schools are segregated or they're desegregated, they're still segregated in a sense. So even though everyone's under one roof, there's still a separation within the school. And she's challenging those students to try and eliminate some of that, hang out with somebody that you don't typically hang out with, be with someone that's different than you. And I thought that was definitely really fascinating. And there was an example that really stood out to me of one of the teachers that's shown in this movie. So I do want to share that with everyone, and I want to get other people's feelings and thoughts on this particular teacher's approach with these students. So let me go in here. And we will go ahead and look at this. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, let me go ahead and
sit down where you belong. Am I going to have to send you out? Omar, get your book and sit down. And put that comb away, it's mine. This is called the Scholastic Read 180 program for struggling readers. These kids are very often behavioral problems, partly because they know they should be doing better. They feel badly about themselves. And so rather than admit, I don't know how to do this, they want attention. They'll cause problems. But this was the population in the school that really needs extra help. Come on, guys, let's move it. Shh, just go. Hillary, come and sit down, please. Omar, get at the computer. Guys, don't make me have to repeat this. Let's go, please. You know what you have to do. Hillary, come to the table. Let's review. Do you have your notebooks? Where are your pencils? Pens. You've got to have your notes. Bring your notes. Get them quickly. Bring them. Or get a sheet of paper and do them now if you don't have them. Do you have paper? Yes, I have some paper. But guys, this is your responsibility. Let's go. Hurry up, Tremaine. Thank you. Come sit down with us, please. We're going to do Act 3, Scene 5, but let's talk about the dramatic irony and paraphrasing on 162 first. In Romeo and Juliet, the irony of the play is that the audience knows things. We know things that the characters in the play don't know. That makes for dramatic irony. What is irony?
That's a word. Irony.
Yeah. What is it? What is ironic?
No.
Okay, paraphrasing. What is paraphrasing? If you paraphrase something, this is a reading skill that we really have to build up, okay? I'm gonna have to finish another day, guys. We ran out of a little bit of time. We'll finish tomorrow. Keelan, behave the rest of the day. Don't get yourself in trouble.
Thoughts about that particular teacher's approach with those students?
Yeah, my initial thought was as she was talking to them, I think in that kind of situation, it would be difficult to learn in that kind of environment when your teacher's talking to you like that and approaching lessons like that. I think it would be difficult to want to learn and just sit down and, yeah, if that makes sense, hopefully.
Absolutely. What are some other thoughts?
I was just thinking about how much time was spent in a transition and like getting your stuff and getting to the table. And I really agree with like what Jenna said about the teacher's attitude, because she didn't like, she wasn't as encouraging. And from like the little blurb she said about who was in her class, it almost kind of made it feel like they were going to be here. They were supposed to be in remedial. They weren't really going to ever get better, but they were going to stay there, which, I mean, when your teacher doesn't believe in you, like, you're not going to believe in you. And so I just agree that like the teacher's attitude makes such a difference in how a class feels, in what she lets happen, what he or she lets happen, like where the time is going, and how engaged the students are.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any other thoughts about what they saw with that particular teacher? I'm wondering if anybody feels like her frustration is warranted. Or maybe better put, could you see yourself being frustrated in that situation where the students were not prepared for class?
Yes, because I've seen it a lot. Just like in my own education, like not everybody's prepared, and sometimes we have to go back for stuff. I have to go back for stuff. But it kind of still gave the feeling that that was every day. And I would hope that you could choose to make something different, that you didn't have to be stuck in a rut of you were frustrated with your students every single day because they were never prepared. Just start expecting them and helping them to do it a different way so they could be more prepared, instead of just going around in a circle, not accomplishing much. So like, I get it, but you also kind of want to have to get over that and just choose something different.
So if one approach doesn't work, maybe try another approach. Don't just keep banging your head against the wall. Absolutely. Those were a lot of the same things that I felt as I watched this clip. And granted, I watched the whole movie, so I had a lot more context. And I guess knowing that many of those students do come from lower socioeconomic status, paper and pencils might be something that they don't necessarily have. And so sometimes, while a lot of times we don't feel like it's our responsibility to do that for our students, sometimes in order for our students to be successful, we're going to have to do some of those types of things. All right. I do recommend, if anybody ever has the time to watch that movie, to please do that. The building, Little Rock Central, it's a beautiful building. It really does produce some pretty amazing students. And there's a lot of history there. So it is definitely very fascinating. So, when you have nothing else to do and you want a good documentary, here's one that might not be too bad. The TV series America to Me, was anybody able to watch that one? Okay, so that one, I just watched the first episode. Obviously, it's something I'll probably kind of keep digging into, just because it does show kind of what it's been like for a lot of students from their perspective. There was a couple things that really stood out. There was a chemistry teacher in the very first episode that acknowledges that he has this bias and these preconceived beliefs, and that he tries to be extremely aware of those so that he can work towards improving that. That's a huge step for many teachers, because we're going to have biases. We're human, that's going to be there, but being aware of those and being able to try to work to do better and not always hold that against every student will be a huge, huge benefit for your students if you're able to do that. There is also a student in here who really does kind of deny his Black culture and wants to be white and tries to act white and does all of these things, because he feels like his culture is not good enough. And that was just in the first episode. So definitely one to maybe even look at if you ever have time. What about the movie Waiting for Superman? Okay, so that may have been the more popular one. I'm curious about your thoughts on that particular documentary.
Overall, I just thought it was really sad because of the school and I mean, I guess the funding, and they talked about how certain areas doesn't really affect how affluent a school is. But to me, I thought it was sad because students really don't get a fair chance. They really said it was kind of like, I can't remember the exact term, but they talked about like it being a factory for students who aren't going to graduate. And that to me is just so, so sad.
Other thoughts?
I think for like the reason that you typically like make a documentary to like inspire people to want to do something, I think this definitely did that for me, because after watching all of it, and it's like because they followed five kids' stories, that like you felt like you were in it with them and you were heartbroken with them and happy for them, and that like it did that job of inspiring you to want to help in the situation. But I really agree with Jenna, because like there were so many of those things that were so sad and so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
The part where they like the one superintendent lady, I don't remember what exactly she was, but she was
Shall
trying to get change. Yeah,
we?
she was trying to get change, and they wouldn't like even consider it. They didn't even vote on it, which, and then after statement that she made, that she said, and it all circled back to being about the parents and about, or not the parents, to be about the adults and not about the students. It was just so frustrating.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there was just so much about this documentary that, like, so many feelings.
It brings up a lot of things. And before I, start talking away, I definitely want to give everybody else an opportunity that was able to watch this movie share any other thoughts or things that stood out for them. Um, so there was a couple things that really stood out, and we kind of talked a little bit about this at one point, where it really showed like filling students with knowledge, like they are this empty receptacle and teachers are there to fill them with knowledge. I'm kind of wondering what kind of feelings that brought up for many of you. Are we there to fill our students with knowledge, or are we there to help them learn how to think?
I think it's more important to help them learn how to think and find their own way of thinking, because not everybody thinks the same. And so we can push and push and push knowledge and facts and things into them, and that doesn't mean that they're going to learn it, and they're not all going to learn it the same. So
Yeah, if we teach our students to think, then they can actually apply that knowledge that we just filled their heads with. It just really made me kind of go back to when we were talking about the different learning theories and having critical theory, which unfortunately, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that disagree with the ideas of critical theory and would like to see that one ban because they don't like what it brings about for students. And it goes back to that, who's going to benefit from what information when we start looking at, okay, who's presenting this information, who does it benefit, who does it not benefit, looking at those different things and being able to really look at something critically. We want our students to be able to think for themselves and not just necessarily believe what they are told. A lot of things about tenure came up. I feel like that one's a really kind of a hot topic for many. A lot of teachers really do work hard to get tenure. And I'm going to say, and the bulk of those teachers probably really do work hard to still continue teaching at a high level. In this particular documentary, it does talk a lot about those teachers that worked hard to get tenure and then didn't really do anything after that. So just kind of wondering, what are your thoughts about tenure? And is that something that is going to play a part in a decision for where you choose to go teach?
Tenure was a bit of a problem in the school I went to because there was a lot of teachers who you could tell they got their tenure and then they stopped caring.
Mm-hmm.
So in Wyoming, I think it's like a statewide tenure law. So I think once you achieve tenure in one school district, I'm not sure if it applies statewide or if it applies to the entire school district, but it's definitely more lucrative in Wyoming to get tenure. So I don't know if I agree with all the points in the film about tenure because I kind of need to do my own looking into that, but it definitely was a bit of an issue where I came from.
I do know that like Converse County School District, at least number 2, so in Glen Rock schools do not observe tenure. They do not give any of their faculty tenure. Which I mean, I found that interesting. Where like I don't know any other school districts that don't offer tenure. And in many of those school districts, you can get tenure after just a couple years. I don't know about any of you, but I don't feel like I'm a competent professional in whatever field after just a couple years of doing it. I've been a therapist for 2 years and I feel like I don't know anything yet. I feel like teaching might be very similar. In which in this particular one, Jeffrey Canada does talk that it took him 3 years to kind of feel like he kind of knew what he was doing. And then it was another couple of years before he actually felt like he really did know what he was doing. And I understand the desire for tenure. Then you have some job security and you don't have to worry about that all of the time. But I do wonder sometimes if maybe it needs to not be handed out so freely. Like you really have to work for it. Like in a lot of your university settings, it's difficult to get tenure as a professor.
Yeah, I'll just add something here that I think that it served a purpose in the beginnings, at least from how the video was explaining it, that in the beginning it definitely served a purpose to help teachers who were not being treated fairly. But I think it's lost its value or it's outdated just as much as like other things are saying that they were outdated. And I agree that I think it should be harder to obtain, or at least that you should have something where you have to do something to keep it, so that teachers don't do the whole, oh, I made it to tenure, okay, now I don't have to do anything, but that you keep your tenure as long as you have, like, I don't know, maybe you're doing your professional development or you have observations and you have some of the merits. So like somewhere in the middle so that you still have that security. So maybe like it's not as hard to keep the tenure, but that you're still doing something to keep it so that we can get rid of that problem. Because I mean, we, like a lot of teachers are telling your students, you got to work hard, you got to do these things so that you can get somewhere, so that you can have a good career, you need to be on time, you need to do all these things to succeed. But some teachers aren't even doing that themselves because they don't have to, because they're just taking the backseat road.
Right.
Which is just not really going anywhere. But I mean, that's just kind of my view of like what's most important to me, and hard work is most important to me. So you should work hard for everything you earn, in my mind, which I know isn't the same for everyone. So
It sounds like you feel like tenure is an important piece of it, but maybe there needs to be some policy change to where you do have to do something to maintain it. I know I've heard a couple stories, and this would be like in the university setting, where when you do have tenure, you do have some of that, I guess, some of that security to where if you need to stand up for something that you feel is important to stand up for, that you can do so without fear of losing your job. Whereas if you don't have tenure, sometimes you really have to watch what you say and do and not necessarily stand up for what feels right to you, because you could potentially lose that tenure track position that you're trying to get. Definitely lots of pros and cons, something that definitely needs to be researched more. Okay, so I'm also kind of wondering about any of the thoughts on the little girl whose mom was not able to pay the tuition for her private school, and she was not allowed to participate in the graduation ceremonies. What came up for you in that particular instance? I know it made my heart hurt.
Sorry I'm talking a lot, but
It's all good.
I think the teacher or the mom, her statement about it, like pretty accurately described it, how they were hurting her more, or the daughter more than the one who wasn't able to pay yet,
Mhm.
and how like it was unnecessary. And especially since like you can kind of tell that in that scenario it was all about the money instead of about education and the child, because I mean, she obviously did all the grades, she did all the work, she earned whatever graduation diploma thing that she was getting, because like it was second grade or something. But she earned those grades, right? Like why did the tuition have to matter that much?
Mhm.
And I just feel like you should have had some other way, like, of getting around that. And because she was doing the best she could. It was, but I agree. Just overall, very heartbreaking.
Just for those that did not watch this particular documentary, I'm just going to show just a short clip of what we were just talking about there.
I'm not graduating. When you graduate, you just won't be at the ceremony. When I'm going to graduate.
Nakia's hours have been cut back at work, and she has had trouble making her monthly payments to Bianca's school.
Today is her graduation, and she's not allowed to go because I do owe some tuition, and they would not allow her to go to the ceremonies. And it's enough that I had to explain it to her. But and I spoke to the principal about this, and I asked them, why penalize her for my responsibility? I can understand them not giving her her certificate or not giving her her report card. But to not let her be a part of the ceremony is just, it's harsh.
So kind of like what Emily was saying, there were other ways that could have been handled for sure. My last question, based on this particular film, was thoughts about the lottery.
That's kind of a boring dystopia kind of deal that you have to play the lottery to get a decent education. It's such a weird concept to me. That's like two steps from like a horror story, that they're for the, like, if you want your child to get into this prominent, like this good charter school, you have to play their game and hope that you're one of the randomly like your child's the randomly selected individual.
Mhm.
It's terrible and dystopian, and like it's wrong basically to start to finish.
So it kind of brings up even that whole idea of the differences between like charter schools and public schools. Should there be such a difference between the two when they are primarily funded not exactly the same way, but close? A lot of your charter schools, I believe, get federal funding. I think, or is it state fund? They get one of the fundings, either state or federal. But like if you look at the charter schools in this particular documentary that are offering so much more, appears to have teachers that care so much more, why is that only a charter school thing and not a public school thing? Kind of something to just kind of mull over and think about. It's like, I feel like this would not even be an issue if all of our schools could perform kind of at the same level. Like all of our teachers are held to that same standard of putting our students first and doing everything in our power to help our students be successful. Instead of having these few charter schools that are doing amazing things, but only have so much room. And what a child goes through knowing that their future is greatly improved if they're able to get into one of these charter schools by luck of a drawing, a computer animated thing, or the little bingo balls. To me, every child that was in this waiting to get selected for a charter school probably needs therapy because they have just been so traumatized. So again, it's kind of one of those things, kind of makes you feel like, okay, I can go out there and I can start making a difference, and maybe others will follow. The last one was American Promise, and I'm wondering if anybody was able to watch that one. So for that one, how should I describe it? That one was rough. To give kind of a brief synopsis of that particular documentary, parents decided to document what their son and his best friend's experiences were going to a prestigious private school. This private school claimed to be very diverse. However, there were very few students of color in that school. There's really high expectations at this school. And for these students, I mean, to watch the struggle and the way the parents pressured them and was on them all of the time was really heartbreaking. When these two boys finished the 8th grade, it was then determined that the one would continue at Dalton, the prestigious private school, and the other went to a public school. Now, the public school he went to was also very high performing and was also mostly people of color. So that student was able to go to a public school that performed very high, that's demographic was much like his own. They did kind of make that case in there where having, teachers that are of the same ethnicity as you are, same race as you are, how beneficial that can actually be towards learning, which I believe in Michaela, Victor, and Jacob's presentation, they talked about how important that really is to have an African American teacher for those African American students. And so that does come up in this particular documentary. There's obviously lots of struggle. There's a lot of personal struggle, not just school struggle, and challenges that have to be overcome. But it just kind of documents their experiences in school, growing up, and then going to college, which both of those students did end up going to college. But not without a lot of challenges, a lot of support, a lot of pressure. So those are all things too to kind of keep in mind too of what it might look like at home for your students. So I'm wondering, like, overall, what was it like to take the time to watch one of these documentaries and see what it looks like?
For me personally, it kind of was like a reality check in a sense. And in this class, like we've talked about, I'm trying to think of the word, like privilege. Thank you. Sorry. And it kind of puts it in check for you looking at other students, and maybe, like we said before, they don't have, pencils at home or paper at home, and they don't have the resources to be prepared or even kind of be successful. And so kind of just taking a step back and watching them, it's heartbreaking, but also kind of moving at the same time.
For me, it just kind of encouraged me, inspired me to just to keep choosing to be the best kind of teacher and to not be one of the teachers who aren't fighting for the students, helping them to get the best that they can and to help them find success, to be someone who's rooting for them and just to always choose to put my best effort in and try to help with the changes that need to happen.
Any other thoughts? Or even any other like suggestions of different documentaries that I could potentially use in future classes that you've maybe seen that we haven't talked about here? I know we have one more that we're gonna watch a little bit of in class on Thursday to kind of wrap things up. So kind of keeping in mind that Thursday is our last official class, I kind of want you to think about any like final thoughts that you might have. Things that were meaningful in class, things that maybe weren't quite so meaningful, and be kind of being willing and open to share some of those thoughts with everyone and just kind of have a real nice wrap up towards the end of the semester. I think being aware of things that are going on, maybe not necessarily in your school, but even in other schools, and just being aware of how your attitude and your beliefs can play into some of that and what you can do to help alleviate some of the differences. I can't even talk today, and some of the inequities that students experience, because this goes across several domains. It's not just race. I mean, and we've seen where social class plays a huge part. So social class, race, we know that gender plays a big part. Sexual identity plays a big part. Gender identity plays a big part. There's so many parts of a person that can affect what privileges they have and what privileges they don't have. And there's a lot to that, and just being really aware of those things can really help you do the best for your students and actually work for your students to help them become as successful as they can. All right, so like I said, if you weren't able to get on and do that evaluation there at the beginning of class, please take the time when we get off here to do your evaluations. Make sure to get your final paper in whatever date. I can't even remember what day that's due. I think that's this weekend on Sunday at midnight. Okay, I know that papers are starting to come in, and I appreciate that. So please make sure to get those in. Remember, it is one of those core assessments, and not having those papers in can actually prevent you from passing the class, even if you've passed everything else. Yep. So make sure that those papers get turned in. Don't forget there is the last little discussion post in there to kind of start a discussion and finish up the semester. And other than that, I think that we're really winding down. We'll be done before we know it. So enjoy your day. It looks like, at least in Casper, the sun is shining today, which is a nice change. So enjoy your day. You don't have to worry about getting prepared for anything on Thursday. We'll do everything in class. There's no preparation, so you can focus on other things and not have to worry so much about this class. And we'll see you all on Thursday. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. All right, take care and stay safe.